This is a second in the series about my critique of Army kilts, both current contracts and former contracts. What I have here is a Seaforth kilt made by the firm of Thomas Gordon and Sons of Glasgow and dated 1947, which would ordinarily be completely restorable. It's the good high quality cloth. The quality of the Army cloth has been dropping since the end of the war, but this stuff is beautiful stuff, and it would be restorable except for some butcher has cut off the front apron for reasons of his own. If it wasn't for that, I could take this all the way back. I'm going to point out some good and other qualities about this. One of them that I noticed in the kilts from the 1947 contract, in a box-pleated kilt, the first pleat and the last pleat aren't box, they're knife pleats. And the reason for that becomes apparent when you've owned or been issued a box pleat kilt for a while, is that the last two pleats, because of the uneven pressures, they turn into knife pleats themselves. So whatever genius came up for that was a very, very good idea. Now with this, we see a couple of two blown pleats that have been sewn together irregularly. Part of this problem is that there's not a very generous seam allowance at the back at all, and it's so narrow that once this comes under strain, the cloth pulls apart. A bad repair we see here. Somebody has glued the leather tabs, which I've just cut off, the leather tabs for the buckles. Terrible idea, because eventually it has to be replaced and leave that stain. Now, I'd mentioned these blown pleats. When a pleat starts to go, you know that you're going to have to wind up doing all of them, because the thread is deteriorating at the same rate throughout the kilt. You see it starting to come back. Right there we can see the very, very tight seam allowance. I would double this to 1 inch at least to prevent this from happening, because we can see the cloth is actually pulling apart. On the inside, we have the back properly cut out, and it's a gradual taper, so it's not as blocky and chunky as that other one we were looking at. The canvas is, 2 inches wide, and it's well done, because it's a continuous piece from the buckle that was sewn on here to the strap that was sewn on here. It wasn't radiused very well, and because of that, the stitching is pulled away. But on the other hand, it did last 70 odd years before it needed this replacement. When I'm laying out a kilt, I allow a hand's breadth from the edge of the apron to the edge of the cloth. The Army contracts generally go for 2 or 3 inches for a much narrower overlap. When I do it, I'm making sure that the customer is getting the full 8 yards of the cloth he's paid for. With the Army contracts, of course, they're getting as many kilts out the door as possible. I can't fault them that. Yeah, it's too bad that this thing's completely gone, because I could absolutely restore this. As it is, I'm going to pull it completely apart, and I'm going to turn it into tartan-patches-bag covers for the 1st Battalion's pipes and drums.